So, as I walk, as I try to calm my breathing, try to bring myself down a little, fire that's happening south of here is starting to blow in. You can smell the smoke. It's even starting to tinge the light a little orange. There's something actually I must admit I enjoy a little bit. You can even see it on the surface of cars' windows. It's starting to make the bugs die. Probably shouldn't be out in it. People are running. Anyway, because I had to start thinking about it. Every so often, every few, like as I'm walking through, like what are the events of the day? I really started to think about this. This was something that there's somebody I know from college that's helped this channel quite a bit. And in the back of my mind, there's been something I've kind of thought about. Obviously, AI fed certain information as kind of the top 100 items to consider. It should be a fascinating sidekick for investment, especially if you could divide its intelligence into thirds. So you had 3 different points of view, hopefully. Maybe fed information, fed prompts. I believe that's the term, fed prompts of from 3 very different categories of information. Yeah, anyway, we should talk about that when we're mining very soon. I have the next couple days off. Wow. It's pretty smoky. The events of the day. AI has won. I am now watching a comedy. This Bigfoot's AI generated, and it keeps stumbling upon various adventures. It's recently made itself a prophet. It's beaten up the Yeti that's apparently living in the adjacent valley. It's very, very smart, funny. If Bigfoot had a selfie stick, is what the entire concept is, and it's funny as hell. If he was, a hikey guy, and he was, just one of those guys who always went out and did hikes, see what's there. Why? Because, well, it's there. What do you mean, why? I went there because it's there. It's on the map, but I haven't seen it, so of course I went there. That kind of guy. You gotta love him because he's just amazing. These things that he'll know, and stuff. And so it's that kind of fellow who seems to have done a thing with AI. But it's the Sasquatch. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And that's it. It's over for entertainment. Rachel Ziegler is now. Oh, God. I remember thinking about this. Alt-right guys. Who's the only other person than Madonna to most notably do a whole thing to Evita? Well, now it's Rachel Ziegler. And if you were to think about this, for those of you who you're legit alt-right, like all the various theories, you have a little fun with them, like you remember it all, like you would get why there's a comic book villain in martial law known as Hitler Hernandez. Like that it was with this idea of he's a super soldier developed in South and Central American, like war against the United States, like that would make, there's actually a context of the near future that would have made total sense as a 1980s thing. So, Rachel Ziegler, okay, she always wears these gray outfits, this weird, she gets it wrong. She gets it kind of wrong, but she wears these things that everything about her, I mean, it's just the perfect, like, if she was a Hispanic fascist, she would be fucking the smoke show of the universe. Nick Fuentes would be talking about her every day. He would be talking about her every day. What is she wearing? What's her hair? She needs to stop being a thought and settle down. All of it. He would be talking about her every day. But not enough Hispanics have embraced their heritage of control of the borrachos. And the Cimarrones, borrachos y Cimarrones. You see, because that's really their heritage, and they really resent it. They resent it a lot, and unless they don't, and they've embraced, no, orden y prospero. They get it. Orden y prospero. And so, anyway, other things that are going on with the Iran and Israel thing. Oh, no, we're not going in. Nope, this is the beginning. This is the beginning of the new age. This is the era of regionalism. It's starting now. We're seeing it. Now, note, imagine if this was Syria taking on Iran. We're tired. We're tired of this, Iran. We're not going to be your foot soldiers in this proxy war against the Jews. We would never do this. We don't want to be your dancing boy, And then what would happen? Everyone would be like, "Yay, Syria! Yay!" If it was Egypt, no, Iran, we are not. No, you will do. We will say, and you will do. Not you will do, and we will say, or whatever. Anyway, oh wow. Wait, do we got a kingfisher sighting again? Let me take a look. I think we got a kingfisher. Hold on, let's see. Maybe? Or is that just a... Okay, I don't know. Maybe it's a kingfisher. Because there's that group of them out here. I'm figuring the smoke is probably changing a lot of their patterns of doing things. I wonder what the hell's... Oh, it's a kid sports thing. Oh, that's nice. That's very nice. Kid sports doing its thing. So, but now, because it's this one state, then now everybody's allowed to look at it. So, okay, here we go. Let me walk through that one. Why is everybody allowed to just sort of openly be like, oh, Israel, maybe it was a place? Why is that even a concept? When we have one of the most widely published works in the history of humanity about this geographical area and its story. And these people and then I've studied a lot of Jewish Apocrypha. So there's then the references to all of the areas up to Armenia that they wandered into, then came back down into the area of Iraq, then into this area that is presently known, with other places recognizing through their however they kept their records, as we know it's mostly Egypt, that no, this was a group in the area, and they lived there. So this is not some kind of proposition of fiction in any way, shape, or form. Why, though, must it be? Because you see, as a nationalist, what do I want? I want them to have a country. People can be like, oh, like the dude in Iran wants them to all be in one place at one time. I'm like, no, it's because then they can exercise their national interests more honestly. You see, if they want to live here, they could live here and they could deal with the interests of, that they have here. That I can understand. The interests that they have in relationship to a faraway land, I can't quite understand because simply I can't. It's not really possible. I could try to imagine what's important to them, but I wouldn't know really, because I don't know their national exports. I would have to do all kinds of study on the background of what are in their interests. There's some things that I do know are interests and then mutual interests, and so that I can agree or disagree upon. But the whole thing is I'm like, no, I want them to have some concept of having a stake in some kind of place in the world. That's actually really important. And so for a very long time in my life, I was also kind of a part of that whole idea of the two-state solution, with my concept being very different of, oh no, well, obviously, it would be the area that meets the Red Sea. That along the Trans-African Rift that goes through there. But you see, that would never happen because obviously there were designs on it by Saudi Arabia. And it was fundamentally too valuable of an area for potential development as the second state. So, that very idea, and then there's that kind of thing. Everyone's using the wrong terminology. They keep referring to, then, things that were put on the map mostly by Rome and recognized thereafter because this was a legitimate empire, rather than what we're actually going by now, the Canaanite genotype that you could trace through genomics, and that there's concentrations of depending on all over the place. I mean, it's like some people will end up in Egypt even though they ended Canaanite genotype cluster. They'll end up in Jordan even though Canaanite genotype cluster. They'll end up all the way in, up to Uzbekistan. Canaanite genotype cluster. Why? Because they're from the area of Canaan, and that's by what the geneticists categorize it as, because it can be charted that way. Sicilians would have their own clusters. The Irish would have their own clusters, even going down to north versus south, all the way to the islands, such as the Manx and such like that. So we have actually a much better understanding of, well, we kind of know all these people existed. Why do we keep acting like the biblical record is of some kind of sort that is just terribly inaccurate, when now we're having more and more things back up that part of the record? And then also the apocryphal kind of ancient records of various ancient historians. Well, the key to this was really this era of time that you had more and more Marxists that would enter education and would just simply doubt these, that there was a good healthy doubt, but at a certain point it became just this fashion. Oh, well, this is just something Josephus says. Now, also, a part of this would be, well, Josephus, right? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. There was a bit of that to it, being that Marxists always tend to have this issue at the end of the day, at the end of the night, at the end of the week, at the end of the year, with the Jews. they have a real problem with anything that anybody can associate with an ancient people in some way that's kind of accurate. Such as, especially, like, I was thinking about, like, you don't really hear, why don't the communists wax Taoist? That kind of thing. Because that would be legitimate. And they wouldn't be able to then introduce all kinds of pretty wild-eyed ideas that wouldn't work if you were to try to propose them in the Taoist lens. And that had happened. I actually have found guys from the 60s who tried to do that, and because that's what guys from the 60s tried to do. And so I started to just walk through this whole thing of, like, the whole deal really comes down to this fascinating area that if you're into occultism, you would find that a lot of European highly educated types had sort of this fascination with Islam, as if it was a veil on a lot of these ancient mysteries that were being concealed by the other two faiths. And that there was these various writers who became very known for this kind of thinking. A lot of German guys who they would publish things about astrology and such like. The thing that I found interesting, it all died. It all pretty much died. I mean, after the Gen X, nobody was concerned with it anymore, and it kind of still creeps along within, especially on the cultural left, but it's kind of dead now. But the thing that started to really hit me about this is I was like, that's the whole point. The left has this sort of completely alternative concept that they're not really sure where Islam came from. And I really mean this as, like, no, you could ask like 10 of them about where did Islam come from, and maybe have like countries and everything on the map, no cities, just countries, and to try to tell them where to point it's from. When did it come into existence? All these various things that it's treated with this sort of incredible extra weight, as if it's like the third basket of the Tripitaka, this brilliant work, finally, it's a final revelation to man, and now, anybody nowadays, people, the Christians, piece through it, and they're like, this is madness. Even linguists go through it. German linguists of like, to the point where it was like people who studied Arabic, and then they would look through the Quran, they're like, this is one of the worst pieces of writing I've ever happened upon in its own language. This is clearly from multiple works and put back together in some kind of rather haphazard fashion. This kind of stuff, where they weren't, where they were much more frank about things and extremely well trained. And so now you have this whole, the thing with the left is now this lost people who have the nadir of knowledge. And what's very interesting is Oregon. Oregon has to now admit that they are in easily the bottom third of 4th through 8th grade education as far as literacy and mathematics. They now have to absolutely admit this. It's called the National Report Card. There's another kind of thing also. I would have to kind of go back through the links. And it's pretty bad. It's pretty damning. But now this is also something that, of course, because everybody's starting to figure this out, is this tends to be a blue enclave phenomena. And especially a blue enclave phenomena sort of before the total collapse of a blue enclave, or what looks like a region in this case. That it's going to be like the old the steel region. It's going to be its own unique thing, and it's already showing. It's already showing. It's already showing. The West Coast depends far too much on universities, research universities, and bogus research that nobody reads. Everybody knows who's in the world of publishing and academia that nobody's reading these journals, that there's some process by which you publish and people then give you money and they keep writing it off on taxes, and because now we have an administration that's not going to put up with so much of this shit, a lot of that's over. And it's going to be very hard for the West Coast as they have to transition to extracting resources and doing agricultural work, which is that was the whole thing with the West Coast. That's what it had. It had a constant basis of that, especially timber. They actually had an incredibly good system that was really, it was private interests it was what they grew, what they were rotating. And it's just, there's even people who've had to explain this of, do you ever go to, and they would describe all these different places, and they go, oh yeah, I went there before. And then he goes, yeah, that's all being managed by this company. Like, they don't cut it because they are waiting probably another 20 years to do so. You know, but and then even if they were to cut it, they would only cut it bit by bit by bit, depending upon the price. It all depends upon the market. Are people needing wood? Why would they need wood? That's one of the big ones nobody who's against timber ever walks through. Why are they buying wood from us in the first place? They never even go through that. You know, so anyway. So now, it's not really that, so we're not going in. We're definitely not going in. That's my call. Because we're already in. We're in with GCC. We're helping them in some way strategically. Because Israel can only hold up for so long without us, because of the whole thing of not giving them more missiles. They have to see if their new iron laser dome is going to work. They got to test it out enough to see if it'll work, because they've tried it and it functioned correctly, but will it work against like a real barrage, you know, that kind of thing. So there's that. Then I do believe that because of the pressure really from constituents, and I totally mean this, I am now confident in this whole idea of pressure from constituents is going to push the Republican Party to do things like prosecute politicians who step in the way of the legal process. Antifa people, everyone's loving the fact, everyone's celebrating that there's finally some Antifa that are being dealt with by the feds in Portland. And it just, the whole concept of it's gloves off is, there's no way past that now. That's really something that's good. That's the part that my mind kind of, it drifts into this realm. I think of like Dune, you know, the God Emperor book of Dune, where he's describing, or the one where the navigator describes things, like the two brothers. It was the later book by Brian Herbert, and it was about the brothers, and one of them's a navigator, and he's discussing being what he's experiencing in his sight, you know, and And so there's this part of it that becomes, I have no concept of how this is going to divide or unite aspects of the next generation in any way, because I don't understand Skippy Toilet. There's also a part of me that, unlike the baby boomers, there's a part of me very Jim Medicare about it. No, let the fucking kids play. Let like Onyx said, let the boys be boys. You know, that's how it's gonna have to be. There's no more of this like, oh, I'm gonna wag my old man finger at you and tell you, you know, this is how you should be. No, we can't. I can't do that. Us Gen Xers can't do that. We can't tell them how to behave so much. We could kind of give them an idea, but we can't really tell them in a lot of ways. And it's kind of a tough balance. We could tell them what not to do. There we go. We could tell them what not to do. But, oh, no. No, more and more I'm starting to realize, like, no. Gotta let the boys be boys. Gotta let these kids dress up in their weird Fortnite out-looking outfits. Like, what's this deal? Why are you dressed like that? Then I think, wait a second. Oh, God, you're dressed the way I was when I was your age. Oh, my God. Oh, God. Oh, I don't even have photographs of that because it was so long ago. There was no photographs. I was actually a lucky guy. There's very little photography of me. I didn't even realize. There's huge sections of my life. There's a very, very little photography of me, especially digitally. I've never understood. I was like, how do I have no photos of myself? And it just, I never conceived of the idea of taking a picture of myself. I don't know why. Why would I take a picture of myself? I remember when digital cameras why would I take a picture of myself? The world of streamers, Tectone, showed an AI, a weird way that somebody twisted this AI into, I don't know if this was actually their audio, but it was just wild. It was 3 different streamers, and it's just the antics of these 3 streamers doing just totally crazy things. I mean, just mind-bendingly absurd. And don't get distracted by her. And the thing, he even said it. He goes, guys, it's over. That's it. He's looking at himself made by AI, and he's realizing how funny this character is. Because it's him, but built just huge, just gigantic. It's Tectone, but just yoked as hell, like some giant Igor Mafia gangster Dvory character. He's beating the hell out of some. He's just talking calmly and beating the crap out of somebody. It was so great. It was so absurd. It was so dreamlike in that way that AI does things, and absurd that I'm just like, this is genius. And he saw it too. He just stopped. He just was like frozen. He's like, it's over. If this is what the present is, if this is what the future and the present is, oh my God, it's over, guys. And it was very impressive. It was legitimately extremely impressive. And it is going to change entertainment. Hollywood is kind of done. This is the new era of indie artists. It's happening right now. They're making their stuff. VTubers kind of led the way, but now it's the wild AI shit. There's no way back from it. It's too good. It's too entertaining. It's too fucking funny. you could do things that it would take you just such a huge budget to do it with the fucking unionized entertainment. And then there's the unionized entertainment. Now you can even see how people who thought there will never be something that can do this, no tool can do this. There's a part of me that I'm going, there's no fried chicken machine. There's a fried chicken machine. It's coming. It's once it gets cheap enough, once the economy comes back, fried chicken machine will be there, and it's gonna suck. So that's why I'm already thinking ahead, because AI can help you do a lot of things. And as you get older, you start to realize the best thing I could do is kind of reinvest in society. That's what investing is. You're not gambling. You're investing in this idea that the kids have. That's the best one. That's the best. I remember when all those... I went by there. My wife, she recommended, she said, you should buy some stock in this. And I said, oh, well, I don't know. She goes, well, let's go by there. And there were all these nice young people who worked there, That's the idea behind investment. I saw it with my own eyes. This was a potential. I put money into their stock. That's the idea. Even all the best, they all say, no, if you see something that especially your wife says, oh, of course, everyone goes there. Yes, that's probably a good investment. So, the left now, the Democrats are in a situation that I've been trying to roll this over in my mind, because there's a part of it that kind of gleeful. I'm like, ha ha ha, ha ha. No. That. But then there's a part of me that I'm like, no. Because the old admonition, after the laughter come the tears, but it's also the thing of never underestimate how bad something can actually be. And so, the Democrats not having really a party that represents a lot of their own membership, and no matter what side, that they're like, you're not doing enough, or you're doing too much. They have now that problem. The Republicans don't have that problem. I've been rolling this one over. I'm like, there's Republicans who've kind of went off seriously half-cocked. Seriously. Way half-cocked on somebody in public, and nobody gives a shit. Said some shit that, where you're like, God damn, and it's like, no, and nobody cares. The story went nowhere. I'm like, holy shit. Wow. Okay. Interesting. Noted. Let's see what happens. The left is now attracting so much attention, but now consistently in a negative way. In ways that are just so negative that I'm like, no. There's no way back from how much. Soon it's going to get to that kind of thing of, even if the Democrats sort of change course in some way, well, but still, if I trust you, what will you do, Scorpion? You tell me now, Scorpion, that all you want is some help across the river. And that's real deal Holyfield now with the Democrats. That, I don't even know how they could raise... everything I'm seeing about their fundraising is really bad news. These things, no kings and all these other things, that because they have now so many problems with fundraising that now it's becoming this issue too of, well, on top of all that, you now have this very small number of people or organizations or sources essentially that are donating. And now quite specifically to something negative, that it's garnering legal attention from that end of the government. I don't know how you're going to sell that. I just don't know how you're going to sell that. I keep walking through this, and I'm like, I just don't know how the Democratic Party comes back from that in any way, shape, or form. It's been the kiss of the fucking scorpion. And yeah, that's also a part of my mind.